How do we get from here to liberation? Okay. It begins with like a cursory analysis of the darkness in which we now find ourselves. And I just alluded to it, right? Empire is doomed. It is finished. It is undergoing an extinction burst. Zionism is seeing this happen, but this is also the collapse of the American state. The American empire. Whether this will be the collapse of the American state depends largely on us, okay? So first, a quick note. 6 weeks ago, I was minding my damn business, teaching my classes, and I did an Instagram Live with Dr. Jill Stein, okay? And 24 hours later, they asked if I would consider being the vice president on the ticket, and nothing could have surprised me more than that. I'll be perfectly honest with you. But one of the questions that I had asked Dr. Stein in that Instagram Live was, what is your vision for American foreign policy, okay? And she said, my vision for American foreign policy is to dismantle the American empire. Okay. She had also just answered a question about reparations. I said, what's your stance on reparations? She said they behave as though it's incalculable, but it's been calculated many times by specialists. It is between 10 and $13 trillion that the United States of America owes to black people, and I am in favor of cash payments. Yeah, you can clap for that. So, reparations and anti-imperialism. With respect to the question of the dismantling of the American empire, I responded, yeah, you better hurry up and dismantle it yourself before somebody else do it for you. Because those two processes look very different. If we took the $1 trillion a year that is part of our congressional budget right now, that is going to the war machine, and stopped spending it on destruction, imperialism, mayhem, and terrorism across the globe, then we would have more than what is necessary to pay for reparations, more than what is necessary to pay for land back and restorative justice for the indigenous population, more than what is necessary to pay for social housing, for Medicare for all. More than enough to work towards a $25 an hour minimum wage, more than enough for all of the social programs that every single person that has been here on this stage knows that we need. All we literally have to do is stop squandering it by taking it directly out of the pocket of American taxpayers and handing it to Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and Boeing after laundering it through foreign genocides, because that is exactly what our current political system is, and that is exactly what it does. If you take the auxiliary costs of that empire, including Border Patrol, FBI, CIA, that price tag now comes back at $1.3 trillion a year. Handed directly from y'all's pockets to mass murderers. The reality is that we actually have more than enough resources to provide for all of the basic needs. Universal basic income, not a problem. Treating our drug epidemic as a public health crisis rather than an excuse for the carceral state to lock people up, not a problem. We can fund all of it with one simple, straightforward step. Right now, as of today, the United States annual military budget is equal to the next 10 countries on the list combined. The next 10. You could cut the United States military budget by 90%, and we would still spend more on the military than any other country on earth. We are being impoverished by a never-ending war machine, and all of our politicians on Team Blue and Team Red are in the pockets of AIPAC and the war machine. With the Green Party, not only do we not take AIPAC money, we don't take any PAC's money. No political action committee can donate to the Green Party. We don't allow it. You have to be a human being with a first and last name and a social security number in order to donate to the Green Party. And no, we don't believe that corporations are people. We don't accept corporate donations either. Anybody tries to donate, we send it back. So now to the other part of that, the collapse of empire. If you do not desist in sowing mayhem and terror across the globe, then the forces of imperialism are going to cause the dissolution of the American state itself. Someone militarily is going to take this empire from you, or your own internal fascist divisions are going to cause the collapse of the state itself. Because you guys are familiar with the term imperial boomerang, right? Whatever we do in imperialist wars abroad eventually comes back to be visited upon our populations here. Everything that we are doing in the way of destruction, terror, and mayhem is now coming back upon us. What did Malcolm, my teacher at distance, say after John F. Kennedy had his brains blown out in 1963? He said, "This is America's chickens coming home to roost." He said, "You do not sow violence all throughout the world and then expect that violence will not come back to you." What did you see on 9/11 except the cost of American imperialism? 800 bases we have around the globe. 700 of them serve no military purpose of any kind. All they do is antagonize local populations with the specter of American imperialism. Dr. Jill Stein has said first day in office, she pulls all of those back. In the first year, those 700 military bases, gone. And with the 100 that remain, phase de-escalation, keep Americans safe instead of putting Americans at risk with forever war, instead of impoverishing Americans with forever war. How many of y'all have been out to the encampments in this past year? Right. So you've seen then the pigs coming in riot gear to remove us, right? And this has always been the dialectic. Imperialism abroad, fascism at home. American policing comes from three cradles. And as a historian, just allow me to run this down. I'm good on time. I'm gonna make this quick. Comes from three places. Everybody likes to say American policing comes from slave patrols. Only partly true. That's one of the principal cradles of American policing, is militias that were designed for slave patrols. By the way, that is also the reason why you have the Second Amendment. It says well-organized militias with the right to bear arms. The well-organized militias that they're talking about are slave patrols, just so y'all know. That's the reason why it has always been okay for white people to carry guns. And as soon as the Panthers started doing it, they lost their damn mind. Because that was never an amendment that was meant to cover black people's self-defense. And just in case y'all were wondering, I'm very much a proponent of the Malcolm X and Huey P. Newton tradition of black defense. We stay strapped. Because if your government will not protect you, then you better protect yourself. So these pigs, these cops coming to these campuses, removing people from these campuses, are expressive of this imperialism-fascism dynamic. Imperialism, the face abroad; fascism, the face at home. Policing comes from those militias. It also comes from the policing of stolen land in Indian country. It comes from the westward expansion. This is the other principal cradle of American policing. The last cradle, the northeastern cities, starting in Philadelphia, then Chicago, and then Boston and New York City, it was literally corporations that founded many of the first public municipal police departments with one principal aim in mind: breaking up labor unions. So there you have it. Policing stolen people, stolen land, and stolen labor. The fascists, the police state that we now reside in, is designed to keep us divided. It is designed to keep us broken, and it is going to dig its heels in ever further in this extinction burst. If we are not organized politically, and if we are not moving in solidarity, then the storm that is coming is going to flatten us all. If you are a PSL partisan, if you're voting for Dr. West and Dr. Abdullah, if you are a Green Party faithful, Hell, even if you're a libertarian, if you've promised never to vote, stand shoulder to shoulder. The movement is bigger than any of us, and it will require revolutionary solidarity in this moment. We do not have another option. The last point that I want to bring home is actually about the moral imperative of this moment, not the political one. How many people have seen the footage from today? I mean, human beings being incinerated in a furnace that we fund. It is of the utmost importance that every single human being that is present in a gathering such as this one root themselves in their meditative traditions, root themselves in their spiritual traditions, root themselves in their ancestral traditions. If you guys do not understand that we are undergoing cosmic harm as a human family every single hour that this genocide drags on, then your hearts are asleep. This is a kind of cosmic warfare against the human spirit itself. Lean on each other. Love one another. What is really going to get us free is love. In the Wolof language, they say that the child of Adam does not release what their hand is holding until they are reaching for something better. The reality is that in our movement space right now, we have a lot of people that have been traumatized and harmed by white supremacy and are still unhealed. And so we move in the space from a place of anger and rage and fury and even hatred, and we think that this is constructive of something. I believe firmly not only in the right of occupied people to resist, but in the responsibility of occupied people to offer armed resistance. And I will still tell you that hatred of your oppressor compromises your ability to resist. Soldiers need to be clear-headed and focused, not indulging in rage. In the West African tradition of Sheikh Uthman Dan Fodio, one of the great Sufi scholars, led uprisings against the slave trade, threw the slave traders out of what is now northern Nigeria. He wrote in his books to his disciples, and he taught to them orally. He said, insufficient anger is blameworthy because it stops you from standing up to defend the rights of the oppressed. But excessive anger is also blameworthy because it blinds the heart. It causes lapses in judgment. It constricts possibilities for solidarity. It closes you down. It tightens you up. We must, as a community, as multiple communities that are trying to build a single community of resistance, we must learn to cultivate within our inner beings a distinction between outrage and rage. Outrage, that which propels us forward. We should be outraged when we see such images. Our hearts should bleed and our eyes should weep for the suffering of our brothers and sisters in humanity. But instead of simply venting that anger and that frustration with momentary expression, a moment of anger in 2020, the system wants you to vent your anger. It wants you to let out that rage. It wants you to express it and let it out. Let that shit simmer. Let it cook. Low temperature boil. Do not ever release all of that pressure. Cultivate that outrage. Live in that space where you live for your brother and sister in humanity to stop harm from reaching them. Hurt people, and we have a lot of unhealed people in the space. Take care of one another. Connect with the resources of your own tradition. Because whether you are a communist, a socialist, a Green Party member, whatever it is, The most important thing that we can be thinking about now, if we know that all empires fall, is what will replace it? What are we planning to construct? What are we going to build? Are we going to see one another through the revolution with care, with love, with empathy, with community, with solidarity? Because if we are, then that has to start in the revolutionary struggle itself. It will not come if it waits till Freedom Day, because we will have built patterns and institutional structures that wire our brokenness into them. We will become the next oppressor. We will become the next imperialist if we do not engage in this radical act of love, this radical act of solidarity. This is a tragic, heartbreaking moment in the history of humanity. But I believe that we will look back on this tragic and heartbreaking moment in the history of humanity as the beginning of a new age in human history. With God as my witness, we have everything that we need for us all to live an existence of prosperity and abundance. If we had spent the last 40 years trying to maximize benefit instead of trying to maximize profit, human beings would be working about 2 hours a day right now, all of us across the whole planet, and everybody would have what they need to eat. If we actually model the society that we want to build, one that is built in love and abundance and prosperity and goodness, and honoring that which makes us unique and distinct, while also honoring that which we all share in our basic humanity, then I know that freedom is coming. Freedom is promised. And may we be alive to see it. May we be the instruments that deliver it. May our children grow and flourish in it. Say Amen. All right.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate everyone for being here, especially Dr. Ware.